Welcome to the 3-0 show, part of the Athletic Baseball Show family. It is our 2022 season preview episode. Welcome if you're watching us live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or anywhere else as we get things rolling here on this Wednesday. Derek VanRiper, Brittany Ghiroli, and the king of waffles, Sarris, here with us. Looking well-rested on his vacation.
Oh, I'm not well-rested at all. I'm in Disneyland. I got a BB-8 though, see?
You do. And you're a little lighter in the pocket.
Oh my God, that thing alone was $125.
Whew.
Are the sunglasses because you're so tired, or is it because you're in Disneyland and that's the Hollywood look?
Yes, I'm on vacation. This is the vacation look.
Who takes a vacation before opening day? Never again.
Who? I should ask my wife that.
You're probably getting that question a lot the last 48 hours or so. On this episode, though, we will talk about possible division winners. We'll make predictions for several awards, Rookie of the Year, Cy Young, MVP, and we'll make World Series predictions. Might even get some bold predictions in there, too, because on our episode last week, Britt and I harshly judged Eno's bold predictions. We may give him a chance to return the favor at some point here in the next hour or so. But opening day, 24 hours away as we record this, and I'm probably as excited for this year's opening day as I've ever been for any opening day because of the meandering road we took to get here. And this is always a great time of year because even if the team you root for, the teams you follow, even if they're not that good, you still have a little glimmer of hope, except for maybe Orioles fans. But at least for the Orioles, that's a young team bringing up prospects. They're getting better too. I think it's interesting to always look at who's projected to be the most improved team from the previous season. Because even if you're a team like the Diamondbacks, for example, the step forward you're going to take is still significant. It's a step in the right direction. It's a step toward being a postseason team again, right? We talked about the Diamondbacks a bit last week. The Marlins among the teams projected for big improvements.
The Rangers.
Not even the Rangers with the biggest improvement, but the amount of money they spent, the young talent they have coming up. If you're a Rangers fan, you are much happier today than you were at this time a year ago, right? The Mets, of course, with the second half slide last year, plus the upgrades this offseason, they're projected to be significantly improved as well. And even the Orioles, like I mentioned, better than they were a year ago.
Guys, 15 games. Who made this?
This is just the reality. It's like the projection versus how they finished.
Oh gosh, I think
you just stop buying the Orioles one.
I think Orioles fans will dance in the streets if they can come that close to 70 wins. Like, come on. Look at the rest of that division.
That's true.
There's no gimmies for the Orioles. I don't know. I don't know about those. You believe those, DVR? You in on all those?
I'm fine with it because I just saw the Zips projected standings come through with a Fangraphs tweet. Zips has the other four teams, the Jays, the Rays, the Yankees, and the Red Sox, all finishing with 88 wins and the Orioles at 64. It seems very reasonable, right? You bring up Adley Rutschman, you bring up Grayson Rodriguez, you bring up some of the other prospects that have been moving through that system that might get a little less fanfare outside of Baltimore, and they become more competitive, more watchable. But they're just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Executing that kind of rebuild in that division, it's not going to be great. But I think as you look at these teams, go ahead.
I mean, just one last thing about that projection is like the last. The one of the ways the projections aren't great is that the trade deadline, right? So at the trade deadline, bad teams get worse and good teams get better. And there's a separation there that has something to do with the roster that doesn't exist right now. So you're projecting the Orioles roster. If they stay together the way they are, it should get to 64, 67 wins, whatever it is. However, what happens at the trade deadline, I think it's actually an open question. You were about to start talking about the rebuild in Baltimore. Is the rebuild at a point where they say, no, we're going to keep Means, we're going to keep Mullins, we're building towards something, we're going to try to get to close to 80 wins or something, 70 wins, or are they going to say, wow, we're one of the very few sellers, right? Like if you think about it with the expanded playoffs, there might only be 4 sellers like that are very obviously sellers and have some pieces. So they might be able to get a ransom for Means. If not Mullins or Mancini, they all start with M. That's weird.
Yeah, I agree with you. I also think if you thought the Orioles were even close, then you wouldn't have made the recent moves they made. I mean, they just traded Tanner Scott and one other reliever who were kind of the back end of their bullpen guys for a pick, a collective, another draft pick. So I think if you're the Orioles, it doesn't really make any sense to stand pat this year at the deadline. That's why I don't think they sniff that projection. It's interesting to see all these double-digit wins. The Mets obviously is going to hinge on Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer staying healthy, right? Otherwise, does anyone think they're going to make that big bump up? I think that's difficult, and that's something the computer can't model either, is coming off of the lockout, how many injuries are we going to see? Ken Rosenthal had it in his column as like the top thing he's concerned about. And I've heard from a lot of people in the game, trainers, coaches, players, about that very thing. We're starting with extended rosters. The Dodgers have 16 pitchers to try to mitigate this, but we're still probably going to see an unprecedented amount of injuries that you just can't account for.
And some boring poo-poo 10, 12 pitcher games.
That could happen too. That could definitely happen. Expanded rosters, of course, to begin the season. Hopefully,
and even into May or something, right? There was there was a second portion. It wasn't just April.
Yeah, so I want to ask both of you, who do you think is truly the most improved team? It doesn't have to be one of the 5 teams on the screen right now. It doesn't have to be the Diamondbacks, the Marlins, the Orioles, the Rangers, or the Mets. Based on all the moves that have happened over the course of this offseason, seeing how the opening day rosters have come together, Britt, I'll throw it to you first. Which team has improved the most for you since the end of last season?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. I like the Blue Jays. I think they made a ton of moves. They were really aggressive. They also arguably lost. Probably they got one of the biggest holes, I guess, in losing Robbie Ray. So they had to fill it. They had to go out and make those moves. I think they got a lot better. I think a team that maybe isn't going to contend this year that got a lot better that people aren't talking enough about is Detroit. You look at what they have added and what they've still continued to add to that team. They get Javi Baez. They go out and they sign Eduardo Rodriguez. They get Tucker Barnhart, Andrew Chafin. They've continued to kind of chip away. They get Austin Meadows from the Rays recently, adding just a couple games here, a couple games there in terms of WAR. And you look at it, and they should have a significant improvement, even though people don't think so because they outperformed expectations last year. It's like they're almost being punished for being so good last year. People are like, oh, I think they're going to do what they did last year, even though on paper they're a much improved team than they were a year ago.
Yeah, that's a good point too. There's some overachievers that got better and will stay the same. Like a little bit like the Blue Jays were really good and they improved a lot, but they'll probably be the same, or maybe a game or two better, which would be huge. I think the Blue Jays are going to make the postseason this year. I mean, it's the expanded postseason, sure, but I think they might win that division.
Yeah, I like the way they're built a lot right now. I've got the Twins as my most improved team since last season. There are plenty of contenders for this, but you look at this team, they made a lot of trades. Sonny Gray heads up that rotation. He might not be a true ace, but he's certainly an upgrade over what they had. Joe Ryan, Bailey Ober, relative unknowns outside of Minnesota and outside of fantasy circles. They're going to be really important pitchers for that rotation this year. Maybe they can get a bounce back from one of Dylan Bundy or Chris Archer. I'd be surprised if they got it from both. And they've got some pitching knocking on the door in the minors. Josh Winder's a guy that's opened some eyes this spring. He might be part of the answer to the how do they get there question with the pitching holes they have in the back end of that rotation. Other pitching prospects, there's Simeon Woods Richardson, Jordan Belazovic, but the big league roster, this is a good lineup. I mean, they've made the move to get Gary Sanchez. I think mixing and matching him between catcher and DH, that'll work out fine. I think not having as much pressure on him and not finding out or hearing every day about how bad his defense is might actually loosen him up a little bit at the plate. They added Carlos Correa, which was probably the biggest surprise of all the offseason moves that we saw. I think that's huge for them as well. They have young players like Alex Kirilloff that could take a step forward. If Byron Buxton stays healthy, I know that's a massive if, and Twins fans have been hoping for that for a long time. They have an MVP caliber center fielder. That's the type of ceiling they have. So they're really kind of good all over the place, and their bullpen is strong too. So they're one of those teams that if that rotation is often is leaving them with these 5 and dive scenarios, they're deep enough in that relief core to do really well. I think the question will be, what kinds of upgrades can they make later on this season to fortify any holes that develop on the roster? But I really like the way the Twins are built right now.
They have 11 pitchers, not just starters, 11 pitchers projected to be above average, to be better than average. And that is tied for most in the game. So I know it doesn't look like that when you look in, and maybe they're missing some sort of top end ace. Like they don't really have an ace that stacks up against Garrett Cole or, even maybe against Jose Barrios, so their old ace. But I could see this working as a bunch of above average arms with a lot of depth, mixing and matching their way on the pitching side while, hitting really, really well. And I think one thing that they've improved, if you look up and down this lineup, that with the changes, for the most part, they've improved their strikeout rate. And I think, going to Correa there, that's one of the things that he brings is this really good contact rate with the power. So if you improve strikeout rate, but you still have the Bomba squad there, and you have some of that pitching depth coming up, I could see them pushing for the playoffs. But if you look, even with expanded playoffs, it's going to be tough because you're kind of looking at 3 coming out of the East,
Yeah.
And
totally.
if you're looking at 3 coming out of the East, that means there's one more wild card somewhere. And that means you're up against the entire West and Central to get that wild card, if not the division. So that's going to be the dogfight. It's basically going to be like Twins versus Mariners is, I think, what it's going to come down to, in the last month, and that might lead for a really fun September.
So you two are both going Twins, I take it, as the most improved? Is that what we're
Nope.
taking out of this? No?
Nope.
Wait, you went on a 10-minute rant about the Twins, but they're not
I
your
was
most
just
improved team?
agreeing with him. I'm the king of waffles. I'm allowed to do what I want. But I was
knew
just
you had a
agreeing with
second
him.
answer. What's the second answer?
I'm going with the Texas Rangers, man. Come on.
All
They
right,
just
all right.
spent $1 bajillion on their middle infield. But the reason that I like the Rangers is not just the 2 big high-priced guys in the middle. I really like what they did around that, too. I mean, if you look at guys like Brad Miller, Matt Carpenter, all these guys they brought in, Cole Calhoun, they're all guys who have a long track record of being good hitters. They're not needed for good defensive positions. Like they're all needed for like DH and corner outfield. Like that's going to be fine. I bet you Donnie Ecker is going to turn one of those guys into a 30-homer guy this year. We're going to be like, Cole, what? Like Brad Miller, what? And then on top of that, John Gray adding a sweeper slider, getting out of course. So his curveball will be average. I see him with the average curveball, 2 really good sliders, and still throwing 94, 95. I think he could have a really good year for him. They will need a little bit to find some pitching, but they do have like a long list of prospect pitchers at this point. It's just none of them are really highly regarded. It's just sort of waiting for one of those guys to step up.
It feels like had they gotten Clayton Kershaw or another big pitcher, you would have felt a little bit differently about them maybe even this year, right? But they're just still missing the pitching. They're almost in the Tigers boat, though, of teams that like, let's give them props. They're trying. The Royals as well for, not playing the service time game with Bobby Witt Jr. They're trying ahead of their window And I don't know how we can make that trendy, but that would totally be a trend I think we would all welcome, right? Like, we may not be good now, but we think we're going to be good soon, so we're going to spend some money.
Yeah, I think that's like the Manny Machado signing in San Diego was like, hey, we're on our way. We're announcing ourselves with this big signing. And I think it works because you need to have one big signing in place to get the next big signing. It's a little bit like the NBA at times where I'm going to join up with the super squad now. It's a little bit easier to get a veteran at the end of his career to sign on for a year or two. If you've got a team that's getting closer to contention. But the problem that I have with the Royals compared to Texas, like I think Texas is still looking for an identity when it comes to pitching development and player development. That's you can see that as a negative, but I think the Royals have an identity when it comes to pitching development, and it's a bad one. Like I see they throw the worst fastballs in the league by Stuff Plus. None of their starting pitchers has a good fastball, and they all throw the fastball 60% of the time. It makes no sense to me. They're all throwing sinkers, and they're throwing them stinkers, really, and they're throwing them 60% of the time. It's like a throwback to a time that everybody else has moved on from, and like they have no pitching prospect that they can be like, look, our method works. Like it hasn't worked, and they keep spending picks. I mean, all these guys a lot of them are really high picks, and none of them have been any good. So I don't know about the Royals pitching philosophy. That's the only thing that holds me back from being like putting them, like you said, with Detroit, with Texas, is like, hey, these are the teams that are on the rise. This is coming, because I really do love the hitters in Kansas City, but the pitchers, man, I think there'll be a good Texas young pitcher before there'll be a good Royals young pitcher.
Wow, save that for the hot takes, Sheesh.
Yeah, Jack Leiter starting the season at Double-A. I think between him and Cole Winn, the Rangers have two guys that we haven't seen yet that you could see being impact guys very soon. The Royals, I think, more questions with that group of young pitchers. They've been trying to get up to the big leagues. The other end of the spectrum, real quick, the biggest fallers, the Giants exceeded expectations last year, so it's not a surprise to see them here. The Rays, as we've said many, many times on this show, the projections generally don't spit out the best possible numbers on them because they use so many young players who aren't really baked into that projection the way they should be. The A's makes sense. They're taking a step back given what they've done to tear down that roster. The Mariners were a team that were fortunate last year. I don't think they're going to fall quite that much because they brought up Julio Rodriguez. They made that trade with the Reds to add Jesse Winker and Eugenio Suarez, and you've got the Cardinals sliding a little bit as well. I'm not sure I buy the Cardinals as a faller. I think they're one of those teams where I think they're in a little bit of trouble because of the Flaherty injury, but they're going to find ways to score more runs than they did last year. I like that lineup actually top to bottom. I think they always have a solid bullpen, and they tend to find guys in the back end of the rotation that pitch at a high level because the defense is really good, and the park is a pitcher-friendly park. So I'm curious, of those five teams, Giants, Rays, A's, Mariners, Cardinals, are there any that you really do see falling as much as the projections suggest that they're going to fall, other than the A's? Let's just throw them out right now. We all agree.
That was the
They're
easy
crazy.
answer.
Who's the other one out of the other four?
I mean, the A's were just the obvious, like, wow, they were even kind of kind to them, right? As we have talked about, they could make more moves at the trade deadline.
Mm-hmm.
I always hate piling on the Rays, and I think you wrote this in your preview. People hate on them, and then they always exceed expectations. So I always hate sitting here saying, "Hey, we're smarter than Eric Neander," because we aren't. We just aren't. We can point to the stats and numbers and cool figures and try to sound smart, and at the end of the day, the Rays are, if they are watching this, just laughing at us, right? Because they're smarter than us. So I have a really hard time saying that the Rays are going to regress that much. Are they as good as last year's team? I don't think so right now as it stands. But I also, wouldn't doubt if they have five guys we've never heard of that come up from Double-A and all of a sudden are game changers, right? Like that's the Tampa Bay Rays way. So I would be hesitant to put them in the bucket of going to be a lot worse.
Yeah, I don't understand the Austin Meadows trade this close to the season because you've got that money budgeted. Why are you trying to save money on the cusp of the season? It doesn't make, unless you're trying to save it for the trade deadline so that they can, make another Nelson Cruz type move to try and go for it at the end. that was a head scratcher for me. But I do know they're really excited about Josh Lau, I believe it is, because there's tons of lows and lows that have come through there. I believe it is Josh Lau. And looks like a power speed guy who's been playing defense. Maybe they think he's just going to be a better player than Austin Meadows right in year one. And they have more rookies than anybody. They always have the youngest squads, and they kind of turn their nose up at experience and the value of playoff experience. And I don't know, they got to World Series. They do really well. They have the best stuff numbers. That model that I've got for pitchers. They've scienced it up. So I'm not betting against them. I'm not betting against them. But I'm also not betting against the Giants, because the Giants are like the mixing match, like older brother of the Rays, where they're just like, they've got a guy who can hit four seamers, and they've got a guy who hits his sinkers, and they've got it. There was a great piece in Baseball Prospectus about that, by the way, that like Darren Ruff is the sinker god, so he only goes and plays against sinkers, and Austin Slater can hit high four seamers, so he only plays against high four seamer guys. So they've really sort of scienced it up there too. So I don't know. I'm backed myself into a corner. Who am I voting against here?
Same. That's just the A's. I think just the A's.
I'm going against the Cardinals. I'm going against the Cardinals because I think Jack Flaherty injury is huge, and I think with the DH, some of that soft landing that they get in their own home park may go out the window. I think that somebody like Dakota Hudson, who's been really good for them in the past, does not look good in my model. You start pitching him against lineups with a DH in there with 9 good hitters, I could see him having some trouble. And I just don't know that they have the pitching that they need to get through this year.
For those new to the show, never picks anything. He talks about every team so that everything is covered, right, DVR?
Yep. It's a coverall.
Yes, he does like a 20-minute thing where he covers every team. And then no matter what, can be like, as I said.
But I did pick a team this time. I said the Cardinals. That's the one I believe.
I don't know. You talked about like 10 teams. I'm confused. I don't know. I think
he's buzzing in Cardinals as the final answer. But here's what we're going to do.
Final answer. Cardinals. Bing.
I have a
one word, I guess.
we're going to make this really easy. We're going to do division winner predictions. We're going to start with the AL East. We're going to go to Eno first. Who wins the AL East, Eno?
One
Mariners.
team, just one.
Mariners.
AL East?
Bit bold. Oh, AL East? I thought you said yes, the Mariners.
It is a bold prediction. 5 out of 5. All the hot sauce.
Listen, today I'm going bold across the board. Toronto Blue Jays.
Oh, that's not that bold. I'm going Blue Jays too.
All right.
It's a sweep for us with the Jays. I have the Jays winning the division too. That's not to be bold. This is division winner predictions.
All right, fine.
The concern I have right now, there's a couple things. The Red Sox, the Chris Sale injury, I think is a big deal. That's going to be a longer timetable than we thought, even just a week ago. So my optimism that I expressed about them on Best on the Board as a team that could be a little undervalued in the futures market, that's gone. They need a healthy Chris Sale. They're going to exceed expectations. They need him back. So I'm backing off the Red Sox a bit. I'm in on the Jays. I love what they've done. I'm with Britt. I think the moves they made this offseason, they fortified all their weaknesses. They've run probably 6 or 7 deep if they need to in the rotation. Sneaky good bullpen as well. So a lot of love for Toronto on this show. AL Central, we'll go to you first, Britt. Who wins the AL Central this year?
Should I just say Mariners just to mess with Eno? Should we just say Mariners for every division?
Everyone.
Everyone. This is such an easy one that I almost feel bad about it, but it's got to be the White Sox, right? I mean, they ran away with it last year, and I think the Twins got better. I think the Tigers got better, as I mentioned. I think the Royals are on the up and up. I don't really know what Cleveland's doing, but waiting for the young, cheap kids to come up and not pay anybody until then. But I don't see anybody challenging the White Sox. I really don't. I think it would take a rash of injuries for anyone else to sniff the AL Central.
Eno?
Yeah, White Sox.
It's another sweep. I got the White Sox too. I think the Twins do apply the most pressure, though, as I mentioned earlier. Seeing them as the most improved team in the entire league, I think they're the team that hangs around and makes it a little closer than people might anticipate. And I do think the Twins are going to be a wild card team this year, which is going to make the AL East competition. It's going to make those teams a little disappointed because it's not going to be as easy as it was last year for the AL East to get 3 teams in the postseason, even with the extra wild cards that have been added. Let's go to the AL West. Let's go back to you on this one, Britt. Who wins the AL West?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think it's Seattle as much as I would love to put them here. I look forward to the day when it's not Houston, but I think it's Houston. They lost Carlos Correa, but they're worse than they were a year ago. They're still better than everybody else. And and I have gotten an awful lot of hate from Houston fans lately for omitting Yuli Gurriel from our top tier players. And so maybe this will help with some of the backlash. We don't, in fact, hate the Houston Astros.
Jeremy
right?
Pena.
I don't think.
Jeremy Pena is really exciting, and he might step right in for Carlos Correa. I had a bold prediction on the fantasy site that Jeremy Pena goes 2020 and steals Rookie of the Year from Julio Rodriguez. So I'm excited for Pena. I love that pitching staff. I always have. But what we saw from them last year is there's a little bit of fatigue/injury concern, I think, with those pitchers. Jose Urquidy has one of the highest injury projections, according to Jeff Zimmerman's injury projection model. Luis Garcia was fading at the end of last season. They no longer have Zach Greinke as the innings horse for them. How many innings will Justin Verlander give? What will the shape of his season be? So I think there's enough questions on the pitching side that I am going to take the Mariners, who I see as having excellent pitching depth. Matt Brash got the 5th spot in that rotation. He's super exciting. One pitching coach that I saw that I talked to that saw him said it was the best slider he saw in the minor leagues last year. That's Matt Brash in the 5th spot. George Kirby has like 4 pitches and is now throwing 96, 97, and he's the 6th guy. And they got more on the way. They got this sidearming guy, Penn Murphy, who just put up a 170 stuff plus in the spring. I've never seen a number that high in my model. And he's just another like Paul Sewald that's going to come in and throw funk from some weird angle. And that bullpen, I think, could be the best in the big leagues this year. I don't understand why people aren't talking about it. Andres Munoz throws 100. They got funk from Paul Sewald. They've got Diego Castillo, who used to be the Rays closer. I mean, I think that bullpen is amazing. And now the lineup is really coming together with Julio Rodriguez in there, Kyle Lewis coming back in a couple of weeks, Haniger just doing his thing. And I think Suarez helping shore up the infield a little bit. I don't know. Offensively, we'll see where he's at, but he doesn't need to be that great. He's like the 7 hitter. So I think this is a really good squad. And I think that I don't know why the projections are missing, but I would guess it's because of those young players who usually project a young player to be close to the mean. But Julio Rodriguez is my favorite prospect in the minor leagues.
Yeah, there's easily a path here. And John, who asked earlier, is this another live podcast type thing? Yeah, I think that's exactly what we are.
Yeah.
Also wants to know if anyone will show real respect for the Angels. I will show real respect for the Angels. I think the Angels are going to win the AL West. I think this is a good lineup. I don't know why they punted shortstop. That's the one thing they did this offseason. They punted the most important position on the field.
I think they just stuck Fletcher there. I mean,
it's fine. David Fletcher's fine. But the point
they're really
is
punting second.
Oh, wait. Let Derek defend his pick here.
Okay,
I'm very curious about this.
Okay, a healthy Mike Trout and a healthy Anthony Rendon. That changes everything from the start, right? They got rid of Justin Upton, maybe a little early, but at least they're going to play Brandon Marsh and Joe Adell. I think that makes them better defensively in the outfield. They added Syndergaard. When Syndergaard's healthy, we know he's an impact arm. If you get a full season of Patrick Sandoval in the rotation and he pitches as well as he did last year once he made that move, they've got a legitimate number 3. Obviously, Ohtani is pitching more like a front-of-the-rotation guy now than he was when he first came in. You look at that, plus the back-end guys like Reed Detmers, who I think is going to take a huge step forward this year. Jose Suarez is a little bit of a back-end sleeper. Michael Lorenzen's just more of a depth guy right now. I think the key to this team is just staying healthy, because compared to a lot of the other teams that we're projecting as division winners, teams we expect to see playing into October, the Angels do not have the deep bench and the reinforcements to back it up. They're a little bit like the White Sox were a year ago. And the White Sox did weather those injuries because the division, the AL Central, was so bad. The Angels don't have that luxury. The AL West is tough right now.
You saw what the White Sox did in the offseason. They mostly attacked their depth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Paula Kimball trade aside, Josh Harrison, Lurie Garcia, those are about like mixing and matching. Harrison can play here if this guy's hurt. Engel, Garcia, we have pieces if people go down. So I think that is sort of what's missing for this Angels squad.
Yeah. So none of us agree on the West. None of us agree.
We're in sync on the AL East and the AL Central, but all on our own planet when it comes to the AL West. Like the Angels bullpen a lot too. At least the A bullpen with Iglesias, DePera, Loop, Myers,
Yeah.
Archie Bradley. If he's your fifth reliever, fine. I mean, I just think this is a team that has become better with health and has made a few moves that actually put them in a much better spot. Really excited the AL West should be an actual battle again this year, though. Looking forward to that. Let's shift the focus over to the National League. We'll go to the NL East. We'll let you choose a division winner first,
Here's where I talk about all the teams and pick one. But I just wanted to say something. I think the Phillies are either first or last. There's something about this team.
Are they first though for you?
Probably not. But I don't want to put them last. But what I'm saying is this: it is going to be spectacular one way or the other. I think.
Yeah.
Because they have no defenders. Their bullpen is all like stuff. 100 miles an hour. Everybody throws 100 and is crazy stuff. None of them can command it. None of the guys in their bullpen can command the ball, like bottom shelf command. That's like they really took a bet against command and defense on this team. And those are like the little things that, like, when you're doing a projection, you're like, it's fine. Look, we mash, it's cool, But then, like in September, you're like, oh God, you guys can't field at all, and none of the relievers know where the strike zone is. And so I could really just see that going either way. So it's hard for me to pick them to win it. But I just wanted to say there's like this outside possibility where it does work out and it doesn't matter that nobody can play defense.
Who's your team? You can't pick them all.
Taking the Mets.
Ooh.
I'm taking the Mets. I think they did enough. I think they have tons of depth. They have so much depth with Dominic Smith and J.D. Davis and Jeff McNeil now being sort of pushed to secondary status. And, yes, the Braves, I've been wrong in the past. I see a little bit of a World Series hangover. There's some injuries. There's some depth issues on the pitching side for me. I love Spencer Strider though. So if he gets thrust into the rotation, that would be awesome. But I'm picking the Mets because they have the star quality. I think they're 2 or 3 deep at the most important positions. They do have some defensive issues, but it's not like the Phillies. So I'm all over this Mets squad. I think they're going to be good. The news on DeGrom is bad, but I think Scherzer will get back in there and be their ace.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you. People, Mets are the Mets. That's true, and I think that was the common refrain when you heard about DeGrom and Scherzer. I do think it's a little different. Being in that camp, I was around those guys a lot. The vibe isn't like, oh, here we go, Mets again. I think they're a better team. They're managed better. Buck Showalter is going to, I think, prove his weight in gold. He's going to be able to kind of prevent from some of that backsliding that we saw with a very talented team. I think he's going to be very good for Francisco Lindor in terms of kind of between the ears, just telling him, hey, go out and play shortstop. No one needs you to be the leader. No one needs you to do extra things. Just go play shortstop. That's all we need you to do. I think the Braves are very good. I just think it's almost impossible for teams that win the World Series to continue to play at such a high level. There's always regression, and it's usually in the bullpen. And I know they have a good bullpen, and I know they made a lot of moves. It just, to win the World Series, so many things have to go your way, injury-wise, personnel-wise, performance-wise, and it is very hard. This is why there are no repeat champions, especially in the NL. This is why it's very hard to repeat. So I think this is the Mets' time. I also think they have an owner who, if they're close at the deadline, will have no issue throwing money at the problem, right? Getting another starter, getting another bat. I don't think that's going to be a problem for Steve Cohen because he wants to win so badly. And I think that that's probably going to put the Mets on top.
I think the Mets are a playoff team this year, but I think the Phillies are winning the division. I think
spicy meatball.
The fever dream scenario, I think, is more real than people realize. And I think the thing about the Phillies that gets overlooked is the quality of their rotation. Wheeler and Nola are a fantastic 1-2. Ranger Suarez was a huge surprise last year. He's obviously not going to pitch as well as he did in the rotation at the end of last season. But Gibson and Eflin, good back-end guys. The bullpen is still a problem. I think it's at least a little bit better than it was a year ago, and it's the kind of thing that you can fix in season, right? They've already pushed enough chips in. Yeah, Steve Cohen wants to win. He's going to make trades too, but the Phillies have committed to trying to win right now. When you have Harper in the back part of his peak or entering the back part of his peak, you want to win now on that contract. I think adding Schwarber and adding Castellanos and paying JT Realmuto as well, all of that is done to make this team win right now. So I know the defense could be a disaster. I know the bullpen could blow close games. I think that's where the first or last, the Ricky Bobby vibes come from for the Phillies right now. They're going to score a ton of runs. They're going to be a fun offense to watch. And I think at the very least, they're going to win a lot of ugly, 7-5 snowball fight type games because they are built to mash.
So you think, DVR, if the Mets are a playoff team, you think the Braves are third place in the East?
I think they might actually get 3 teams in. I think the way this season could play out, it could just be a heavy NL East group of wild cards getting in, and they're going to be all reasonably close. And I think the Acuna injury, they won the World Series without him last year. I think during the regular season that becomes a problem. I wonder, you replace Freeman with Olsen, it's not much of a drop there, but there's that added pressure, that target on your back as a defending champion that you kind of have to deal with. Maybe it's less intense in baseball than it is other sports, but I think that is a real possibility that there's some kind of hangover effect there. They're a very good team. They have pitching depth. I love their rotation as well. They've improved their bullpen. Atlanta is in a good position. So I think it's 3 playoff teams coming out of the East, but I think the Phillies are the surprise by winning the division.
I wonder if there's any chance, and this stuff gets overblown, but it does matter sometimes, if there's any chance for sort of fracture in team chemistry in Atlanta. I have to bring it up because this is something that I didn't care about at all when I wrote for Fangraphs and was a blogger. And the more that I've been in the clubhouse, I think you can kind of see it sometimes. And what happens is the leader in the clubhouse is the highest paid position player. It's just a de facto thing. Everyone kind of just turns to that person for the interview at the end of the game, for, some sort of style leadership and that sort of deal. So Matt Olson, in this weird way, steps in. I think he's the highest paid player because Acuna and Albies are on these underpaid extensions. And so he's like a new guy, that just came in and replaced Freddie Freeman and is now going to be the leader. Like if they start losing, I love Matt Olson. He's a really nice guy. He's from Atlanta. I think it'll be fine, but there's a chance where things don't go that well, and there's a little bit of strife behind the scenes.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up because having covered teams, having been on a beat for a dozen years, that was my first thought is how does this impact the clubhouse? What did Freeman do with these young guys that we didn't see, right? That didn't show up in standings? What did he do when they lost for a week straight? Right? What kind of conversations was he having with guys? And I don't think you can step into a new team and all of a sudden just be the leader. I don't think it's that easy. I think it's something you earn from being around. You earn trust. You build relationships. And you can't replace Freddie Freeman in Atlanta in that regard. You could replace his numbers, and Matt Olson could make them a better team on paper. But I do wonder about those intangibles. It's a great point.
As a self-described spreadsheet nerd, it's exactly the kind of thing that I would overlook. So I don't know. I'm trying to be more aware of situations like that. And this does seem like a legitimate issue, but they're very well built. They're going to be, I think, generally fine. But how they handle adversity without Freddie Freeman there, I think that's a fair question to ask at this point. Let's kick it over to the NL Central. Britt, you have the floor first. Who wins the NL Central this year?
Okay, I hate to be Eno and talk about multiple teams, but I think my head says the Brewers. No one ever really talks about them. They might be the most underrated, probably division winner going. But my heart says, how cool would it be if the Cardinals won in the final year of Pujols, Yachty, and Wainwright, right? Probably not a thing, except you look at the Central, and if the Brewers still struggle offensively, I'm not really sure what to make of the Cubs, right? Could be second, could be fourth, could be whatever. Can't there maybe be an avenue here? I can't make the numbers make sense, but I want it to make sense because it would be, in my opinion, one of the coolest stories in baseball if they were able to win the division. I'm not saying they win the World Series, but if they were a playoff team, if they somehow outperformed and had one last gust of wind and all these old guys, just how great would that be? So I would love to say Brewers. My head says Brewers, but I'm going to it back and forth and say, let's go Cardinals just because no one is picking the Cardinals. And it sounds like an insane pick that I will agree I cannot defend at all with numbers. I'm not even going to try. Pujols adds maybe half a game of WAR. It's not like this huge addition. But hey, if Jack Flaherty comes back and he has a good year, maybe they can get it done. Maybe.
I'm with Jake.
Jake is a Cardinals fan. He says he'd pick the Brewers. Nostalgia doesn't win games.
Nostalgia doesn't win games. You know,
I'm
when
keep telling
What
myself
about
that.
voodoo magic?
Corbin
What about
Burns.
Cardinals voodoo magic?
That's right. There is some voodoo magic. I'm saying, man, Corbin Burns, Freddie Peralta, that Brandon Woodruff, that rotation is just too good. Their bullpen is too good. And I think they've done some things on offense to get better behind the scenes. I think a full season of Willy Adames, a full season of Rowdy Tellez, and maybe some bounce back from Keston Hiura and Christian Yelich. I think there's a way that this team comes together and becomes a World Series contender if they can find it on offense. But I think the pitching alone is enough for them to get through the season as the division winner.
I will say Brewers, I agree with Eno's points across the board, and I will not add anything else to the conversation. I will move us on to the NL West. Let's keep it snappy. Yeah, let's go NL West. Who wins this division?
Dodgers.
Yeah, I think that's
This
a pretty.
is an easy one.
Star wins again. Who'd have thought?
Yeah.
You want to keep it snappy? Dodgers. You won't get an argument here from anybody.
All right.
Second place. Second place
added
is
Freddie
interesting.
Freeman. Yeah.
Who
Second place is interesting.
Who do you like as second place in the NL West, and do they make the playoffs as a wild card? I guess is the follow-up question. What do you think, Britt?
I like the Padres still. I think the Giants are probably going to end up in third, not because they had some crazy voodoo magic last year. I believe in them. I believe in their direction. They just had so many things go right. It's just so hard to replicate these kinds of seasons. And the Padres wildly underperformed. They did get better. I still think they're probably one move away from really challenging in the NL West. But I think the Padres, with Bob Melvin, another thing that doesn't show up in the stats, right? Able to right the ship, able to kind of play to the potential of a very talented lineup, especially if they find a way to get rid of Eric Hosmer's contract and somehow use that to get better, maybe at the trade deadline. I think you're looking at a very strong San Diego Padres team.
Yeah, the Padres, Giants, Braves, and Cardinals. They're taking two of those, I think. So I voted against the Cardinals. They're out. That means it's one of the Padres and Giants. And that just is a rough choice for me because I think the Padres have some really generational type young talent on that squad, but the Giants are just so well run. Like, it almost doesn't matter who the players are. It's like they're just going to get the most out of the guys they've got. And they just added Carlos Rodon, which I think is an underrated move. I think they might skew a little bit more pitching this year, but I don't know, man. I think the Giants are in and the Padres are out.
See, I think I'm Padres over Giants right now. It's going to be close. It's going to be hotly contested, but I'm worried about the injury risk build that the Giants are leaning into with that rotation. If that goes wrong, that can go very wrong. Not that the Padres have this model of health with their core of starters, but I do like that group a little bit more in terms of innings projections. I think Mackenzie Gore getting back on track is just a great story overall. It's really nice to see that he might be a significant contributor.
Something I'm not sure the Giants have. You know what I mean? Right? Like Mackenzie Gore is something I'm not sure the Giants have, which is like a really good young. I mean, Sammy Long. It's not Mackenzie Gore.
No, not quite. Sammy Long is interesting, but he is not Mackenzie Gore. We're going to get to some individual hardware in just a moment, but first.
Whether you're a full-fledged coffee snob or you just know it when coffee tastes really perfect, Trade's real coffee experts personally taste test over 450 roasts so they know exactly what to recommend for you. Because the truth is, what I like and what you like could be totally different. You will like a selection of specific coffees that are different from anyone else's taste. It has absolutely worked for me. The last beans we had delivered were from Sight Glass Coffee in San Francisco. They're Banner Dark, delicious, a perfect roast, and we used the French press, so got it whole bean delivered. Perfect, less than a week, after it had been roasted out in San Francisco. All you have to do is answer a couple of questions and you'll get your own personalized variety of coffees delivered fresh to you as often as you like. No gimmicks. Trade delivers a bag of freshly roasted coffee as whole bean or ground for however you brew it at home, and they guarantee you'll love your first order or they'll replace it for free. Trade has delivered over 5 million bags of fresh coffee with more than 750,000 positive reviews, and right now Trade is offering new subscribers a total of $30 off your first order plus free shipping when you go to drinktrade.com/MLB show. That's more than 40 cups of coffee for free. Get started by taking their quiz at drinktrade.com/MLB show and let Trade find you a coffee you'll love. That's drinktrade.com/MLB show for $30 off.
I would drink coffee with that 80 grade voice that just gave us that promo. I want coffee right now.
I love coffee. I mean, I've been on the decaf train though because I'm 6 months pregnant, and let me tell you, it is not the same. The taste is fine. It's not the same. You don't get the caffeine hit. You don't get the adrenaline rush. You don't get like Eno on the, the Space Mountain type of high. Instead you're like on It's a Small World on a loop,
Yeah.
Oh, that's a nightmare.
Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that. That is a bad day at Disneyland. If that has happened to you, I am very, very sorry.
Oh.
It's going to be the year of the rookie. There are some great rookies on opening day rosters. I'm glad that that's one of the storylines of this 2022 season. You hinted at this a little bit earlier. You're going a little off script, at least in the bold predictions department. So I'm curious if it's your actual prediction or if you're letting yourself have two predictions for the AL Rookie of the Year winner. You hinted at this a little earlier. Is the bold pick the actual pick, or are you going a little more chalky with one of Bobby Witt Jr. or Julio Rodriguez or Spencer Torkelson?
I'm gonna go with Jeremy Pena. The thing that I think is different about Jeremy Pena than anybody else is he plays an important defensive position, and B, the team needs him there. There's no other option really. I don't think they want to go to Aledmus Diaz as their starting shortstop. So if Bobby Witt struggles for a little bit, there are other people who can play third. They've got Adalberto Mondesi can play short. Like they've got other options. And in Seattle, if they're really trying to win right now, if Julio Rodriguez has a Jared Kelenic type beginning to his career, he could go back down easily he could go back down in 2 weeks when Kyle Lewis is up. If he goes for the first 2 weeks. I'm not saying that's the most likely thing to happen. I'm just saying that Jeremy Pena is the one that's going to have the longest leash. And so I think they're just going to put him in at short and play him all year. And so he'll have the counting stats. And I think it'll be something like a 260 average 2020. If you're 260 2020 and you played all season, I think you win the Rookie of the Year.
260 2020 played all season. Okay, I'll jump in with mine real quick. So there's two ways to look at this. There's who do you think is going to win, which I'd say Julio Rodriguez would be my pick, the chalk favorite. And who would you bet if you were betting the futures? I wouldn't bet Rodriguez. I wouldn't bet Witt, and I wouldn't bet Torkelson. I'd bet a long shot. I would bet Kevin Smith in Oakland because Kevin Smith is going to play. He has power. He has speed. He's probably not going down if he slumps. Whereas with all these other guys, those are teams on the rise that are really trying to thread the needle, get development right, and win right now. So, yes, I'm picking Julio Rodriguez, but if I'm actually putting in a ticket and betting on it, Kevin Smith is that deep sleeper in the AL that could have a great season that people are in fantasy circles talking about, but in real baseball circles, they're not really thinking about him yet.
I like that. What's cool, though, is that there are legitimately 5 candidates for this, which tells you how exciting the future of baseball is, right? I'm going to go Torkelson. I saw him a lot this spring. I think the Tigers are very excited about him. I think the Tigers are in a position where, yes, they want to win this year, but not at the expense of kind of toying with him. They're not going to send him down because they need these extra wins. I think he's going to take some lumps. He's going to get the opportunity. I think having a guy like Miguel Cabrera there to lean on, you saw he was involved in kind of telling him he made the team. I also would like Adley Rutschman as my dark horse, but I don't know if he's going to come up in time. I think that's going to play a factor. We saw the injury. I think he probably would have made Baltimore's roster if he wasn't injured to start the season. And then he would have been kind of a trendy pick, right? Will he do enough? Will people notice, even though he's in Baltimore? But I think that he kind of belongs in that iffy category because I don't know if we're going to get enough of a sample size of him this year.
Yeah, I'm just excited to watch this entire group of young players. And it's not just the American League either. The NL is also loaded up with great young talent. So, Britt, who do you like to come away with the NL Rookie of the Year award?
God, the NL is the one that gets me, guys. I feel like I'm gonna be like Eno and Flake on a bunch of different guys on this one as well. I think CJ Abrams is probably
It's hard. There's a lot of different
hard.
players.
It's hard because you're looking at like who's going to get the playing time, right? Who's going to come up? What team is going to invest? As we said with the AL, I think I'm going to go CJ Abrams. Though honestly, like I don't know. I feel like O'Neal Cruz has a lot of upside offensively. There are other guys that I feel like could make an impact on this, but those were the two. If I'm punching a ticket and I'm betting my real money and not just Monopoly money, those are the two I'm going to go. If I'm betting Eno's money, I've got like 5 other names for you. His Disneyland bucks.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, in terms of long shots, there's some names I like. Ronzi Contreras, and I think he's my favorite pitcher. But Mackenzie Gore apparently really revitalized not only the velocity but the shapes on his pitches. So I think those are the 2 favorite pitching guys. But you have to think about opportunity. Down market names I just want to mention are Alec Thomas in Arizona. I think he's a really good, really polished hitter that can come up and smack it. But the thing is, I think you do want to favor players that are up to begin with. There are fewer names in the NL that are up to begin with. So that leads it to kind of Hunter Green, Bryson Stott. And then the guy I'm actually going to pick after naming all those, Seiya Suzuki. It just seems like, it's unfair. He's older than everybody. He's got a lot more experience. But Seiya Suzuki is a really polished hitter that is going to at the very least hit for a high average with 20-something homers and some steals and play all season. So I think he's really, as close to a lock as I can think of.
A couple names from the chat too. We've got Matt Brash maybe as a sleeper candidate for something like that. He's got the opportunity right away. I think it's harder on the AL
120.
side.
It's also harder for a pitcher because like kind of 120, 140 innings. Is that going to be enough to go up against a position player?
I would pick a pitcher only on the NL side this year, but like said, it feels unfair that Seiya Suzuki and any player coming over from a professional league overseas can win Rookie of the Year. It seems like because the contract, the expectation should be higher. Playing time shouldn't be a concern at all. I think he can do a little bit of everything from the jump. So my pick would be Suzuki. In the NL betting market, I think Edward Cabrera at plus 2,500 is also pretty interesting. Could be a nice bounce back arm for the Marlins this year after a brief disappointing debut. He was battling arm injuries last year, though. I think that's a big part of why we didn't get a better result from him in 2021. We got a couple more awards to get to. Let's hand out some more hardware. Let's shift the focus over to the Cy Young Award. We got some odds we're going to put up on the screen here. Lots of options here. We're going to start on the AL side, Britt, and you can go off the board here. These are just some of the favorites that we have on the screen if you're watching us on YouTube.
I think Garrett Cole is the easy pick, right? I've seen a lot of people predict Garrett Cole. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Garrett Cole was the guy. I like Bieber. I think he's going to pitch, against probably weaker lineups than Garrett Cole is. Think about what Garrett Cole has to face: the Red Sox lineup, the Toronto Blue Jays, who we all picked to win the division. Those are going to be interesting as well. But I still think I'm going to go with Cole. I think, again, this is tougher to predict a guy off the board, right? Because you're basically saying a guy who nobody expected is going to have a career year out of nowhere. And that could happen. It's just a lot tougher to sit here and say, well, it's going to be Kevin Gossman, for example, right? It's like when Jake Arrieta won a few years ago with the Cubs. Nobody saw that coming. The safer bet here is to go with Garrett Cole, so that's where I'm going to put my money.
How about you, Eno?
I'm going to go with Jose Barrios. I just think he's got a high floor. I think they're going to give him a lot of wins. Wins still matter to a lot of voters. I just think, I think he's a guy who just has a high floor that has also a high ceiling. That's a fun combination. He has a very low injury projection, lower than any of these guys. And I think that might matter just to put together a full season when nobody else is. That might be the way that Cy Young separates himself this year, is just by being the bulk guy when nobody else is. One name I want to do as a out of nowhere, quote unquote, would be Dylan Cease, because what I have found with Cy Young is like it'd be. I bold predicted Logan Gilbert to be like the best guy on the Mariners this year, but I think even then it would be kind of hard for him to win Cy. I think it's almost like the Oscar awards, where like the Oscars, where like you have to have done something before, and then the second time you do it, you win the Cy. So Dylan Cease already has broken out, if anybody noticed. So what I'm saying is he does it again. He's maybe a little bit better or a little bit luckier and wins the Cy for it.
I think I'm trying to look at a long shot in Luis Severino. He's plus 8,000 on BetMGM. If he somehow stayed healthy, he's good enough to win it. It's just a question of innings. And again, I've tried to play these futures more for amazing long shot odds, not chalk. I mean, Cole being the chalk makes sense because Bieber's coming off an injury. Giolito's coming off of a relative down year, but he could certainly do it. I like the Cease and Barrios mentions here. The other name that I thought was kind of interesting as I looked at the mid-range is actually Justin Verlander. I think we're estimating that he's going to be lighter on innings.
Ooh,
but
that's another one.
If Verlander gets to 180 plus innings, I mean, it's not impossible. The skills I think are going to be there, and he'd be a strong consideration because you'd have that comeback player of the year vibe as well for people voting on the awards.
Well, and he's got the cachet, like Eno said. It's like Scorsese doesn't win the Oscar for the best movie. He wins it because he lost it so many times. People are like, how did Scorsese never win? Right? It's kind of the same thing. But I don't even think 180. I mean, look at what's dwindling, and I disagree that wins matter to most voters. I think wins and innings are all going away. Corbin Burns, there was big talk last year. Remember Zach Wheeler pinching all those extra innings with worse stats, but it's like, okay, the guy might have had better stats if he had pitched as few innings as Corbin Burns did. I think the whole thing is changing. I think once you get over that like 160 mark, voters are just going to consider it a wash.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Now, I've got the NL odds up on the screen right now. Scherzer has moved just a little bit to plus 600. Burns still at plus 800, by the way. Walker Buehler down at plus 900 now, so that's moved as well. Jacob deGrom, because of the injury, I don't think you could pick him at this point. He's going to miss too much time, even if things go well. I mean, even though the quality of the innings might be as good as anyone in baseball, I'm on Burns here. I think Burns is the best pitcher in baseball. I'm surprised his odds at this point don't look more like Cole's on the AL side.
Well, it's hard to follow up a Cy Young year with a Cy Young year, right? It's really hard. I think with deGrom, unfortunately, more and more, he looks like the Koufax of our generation, though I don't want him to be the Koufax of our generation. This guy who is brilliant, but his body just keeps betraying him, right? Innings are going to be a factor again. With Scherzer, you're talking about a guy who's, almost 38 years old. I don't know if he's going to be able to continue what he's done. I mean, he's won 3 Cy Youngs. He's changed grips. He's done all kinds of crazy stuff. He's working around a hamstring issue right now. I don't know if he's going to be enough Cy Young-wise. I like Walker Buehler there, a little bit further down. The Dodgers really need him. If there's one hole in this team, it's their rotation, right? It's the depth of that rotation moving forward. I think he's going to continue to get better. I think, mound demeanor-wise, stuff-wise, this is a guy who competes. This is a guy who really kind of takes charge and wants to be the ace of the Dodgers rotation. And I think he's going to be buoyed by the fact that he's basically got the 1920 Yankees hitting behind him. I like Buehler as the Cy Young in the NL.
Yeah, the NL race. I think it's actually way more wide open. I think there's so many names, and it's amazing that there could even be like a Robin to a Batman that wins this year. So Julio Urias in LA could win it, as the kind of Robin to Buehler's Batman. Brandon Woodruff is one of my favorite pitchers in the game. Him right next to Corbin Burns, and keeping it in the family, that'd be kind of amazing. So, just picking one. I'm going to go with Woodruff. He's the guy that I have highest in my rankings, and he combines really great stuff with really great command. And if Burns takes it all a step backward, I think Woodruff will step into the void.
Here's a long shot that's interesting, though. Charlie Morton at plus 5,000. Come on, you could do it, right?
Yeah, we love Charlie Morton.
Probably a little too much. Maybe place that ticket on somebody else. Look, he's capable of doing it. A lot of these guys on this list are.
What is Logan Webb's odds?
Plus 1,600.
Huh.
Not that
you know
long.
what? What was Ohtani in the AL?
Plus 2,000.
Okay.
I just, yeah. I was about to say innings, but you convinced me on the innings thing.
Yeah. I mean,
they go from giving the MVP to the Cy Young next year. Woo!
ooh.
Ohtani, man.
Well, that's pretty
I mean,
exciting.
that would help Derek's Angels pick, the division winner pick for sure.
He needs to do something. Ohtani needs to be very good. He needs to at least be top 3 in one of them. Well, not necessarily. Not if Trout's amazing. Not if Rendon's healthy. But I would imagine Ohtani's also good if my Angels winning the AL West fever dream becomes reality. MVP awards out there right now. Looking at these odds, I mean, Ohtani plus 350, a slight favorite in the AL. Mike Trout sitting there at plus 400. Vlad Jr. at plus 450. You got Rafael Devers, Wander Franco, and Aaron Judge all at plus 2,000. Britt, who wins the AL MVP award?
Probably Ohtani, though I really enjoy the Wander Franco pick, especially at plus 2,000. I think that's some decent value there for a guy who has a legitimate shot at it, right? But to me, as long as he's healthy, it's Ohtani's award to probably lose. Though Vlad Guerrero, it's so tough. You're like, God, how like last year, I know voters had so much trouble. Like, how do you evaluate Ohtani when there's nobody doing what he's doing, right? How do you separate that? And it almost seems like you're punishing Vlad Guerrero Jr. because he doesn't pitch, and that's not fair either, right? It's almost like, can we give Ohtani a separate award and then just judge everybody else, and maybe it would be a little bit better? I just don't see how the voters who are already, everyone's biased, just totally enamored by what he is and what he brings to this game. If it's close, I think Shohei runs away with it.
There's just this thing called like Mike Trout fatigue that we saw before. It wants to. Sometimes we're that great and you just do the same thing and you don't need it's something before. Mike Trout has lost it in years when he should have won it. Willie Mays lost it in years he should have won it. People just sort of are like, yeah, but it wasn't as good as last year, so who cares if it was probably the best thing in baseball. So I could see somebody else surging forward off that list of favorites. For me, it's Vladito coming out and just hitting this, like maybe getting a triple crown. Like I think if he got the triple crown, then you, even if the WAR kind of favored Ohtani, you'd be like, yo, this guy just won the triple crown. We gave Ohtani the award last year. It's easy enough to kind of do the mental gymnastics. The long shot for me is Kyle Tucker. I just think he's just a really amazing hitter across the board in terms of making contact, patience, hitting for power. He's going to run the bases. He's going to be, if the Astros win that division, he's going to be their best hitter. So I could see Kyle Tucker for just to have a name off board.
I think I'm with you on Vlad Jr. of the 3, kind of favorites on the AL side. Wander's going to win an MVP someday. I don't know if it's going to be in 2022. Those are odds that are enticing to me as well. I think out of the long shots, Tim Anderson at plus 6,600. This is a White Sox team that everyone thinks is going to win the division. There's going to be a few players at the top of that roster that have great years. Why couldn't it be Tim Anderson? He's the face of that team, right? I mean, I know Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez are also great players. Jose Abreu's a great player. So there's other guys there. But Tim Anderson at plus 6,600 is actually pretty interesting to me as a long shot ticket. Got one more prediction that we have to get to before we get to the World Series. NL MVP. Who takes the NL MVP award this year? We'll go to you first,
Show me the favorites again real quick. Sorry, the kids are back. We got to check out. There's a lot going on here. Yes. I'm going to go with
Soto, Acuna, Harper, and Betts among the favorites.
Mookie Betts on a bounce back. And the only reason that I would have to go against Soto, who I think is the best hitter of all time, no, not yet, but might end up that way. I just think that this year will be like really OBP heavy. A lot of walks because I don't think there's a lot of fear in that lineup. I know there's a couple, there's Nelson Cruz, but that's just one other player. I don't think I fear anybody else in that lineup. So I could see just a ton of walks for Soto, and it's going to be up to him to whether he expands his zone or not to get more knocks. So Mookie, I think, gets healthy, gets going, and puts up another 330, 15 type season.
See, I like Soto, and I think The Nats lineup does have some holes, but you have Cesar Hernandez, who's going to bat leadoff in front of Soto, who's got great OBP in the leadoff spot. So if he gets on and you're walking Soto, now you have Nelson Cruz and Josh Bell with 2 men on and nobody out. And that could spell a disaster. So I think there is decent protection for a guy like Soto. It's certainly his award to lose. This was a guy who dealt with COVID scares, who dealt with all of this stuff and still put up those numbers. And I don't think people realize that. Hello, Eno's children. We're almost done. So I'm going to wrap it up because I know Eno's kid, the sugar is probably hitting them. God knows what they had for breakfast at the Disney buffet. I'm going to go with Soto.
I'm going Trey Turner at plus 1,600. Kind of splits the gap between the near favorites and a little bit of a long shot. Dodgers are going to be amazing, as everyone's saying, and I think he's going to be right there in the thick of things. Let's get to our World Series predictions so they can get on the rides ASAP. Real simple. Who wins the World Series and who do they beat in the World Series? We'll go to you first, Britt.
The Blue Jays over the Dodgers.
Ooh,
the Dodgers are
epic.
the Dodgers, they're going to make it, but I think it's the Blue Jays. Like, hey, what do you say? Blue Jays. Have you guys ever been there? You heard that song? I'm all in. I'm
Never
all in
been
on
to
the
Toronto.
sound. No?
Nope.
No?
I know
all
that
in.
song exists.
I spent too many years in the AL East covering the Orioles. I hear that song every time the Blue Jays win. You would hear that song. I'm all in on the Blue Jays. I think it's their year.
All right, Waffles. One World Series winner.
Just 2 names, just one winner.
One win.
God, I can't. I want to say all the names. Okay. I'm going with
He's stuck.
Yankees
He's
over
really thinking
Brewers.
about it. Yankees over Brewers. Okay.
Wow, Yankees' first title since 2009.
One thing that I was looking at World Series, I was spring training stuff numbers, and they have some names that are popping that I was really surprised by. Clark Schmidt is a top 10 pitcher by Stuff Plus in the spring training. Luis Heel is up there with Matt Brash and all these other names that we're talking about. And then there was one more. Lucas Luetke is just pitching out of his mind. Those are interesting names because Cole is fourth or something in Stuff Plus. They have the guys they normally have, but I think the depth is better this year. I think Luis Heel stepping in and Clark Schmidt, this version of Clark Schmidt, might actually be the pitching depth they need. Severino and Cole are healthy at the top. Why aren't we talking about them? So,
well, you picked the Blue Jays to win the division, though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We went
but
a
I
whole
don't think
hour
that
without
almost
even
matters.
mentioning the Yankees.
I don't
Alright.
think it matters. I think the Blue Jays could win the division. I think the Yankees could take the wild card to the top.
I like it.
Somehow, I don't know how, people are sleeping on the Yankees just a little bit. I'm going to be a homer. I'm going to take the Brewers over the Jays in the World Series. Maybe it's just because that's what my heart really wants. I don't know if I actually believe that's going to happen, but that's what I want to see. Maybe you get 3 of the 10 best starters in the league all in one rotation in Milwaukee. I think they do find ways to score runs. And I think miraculously they'll score more runs than the Jays in the World Series. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I think it's possible. Me thinking it's possible means that it can
Elite
happen.
run prevention in Milwaukee, though.
Yes.
I think so. I think that's what's going to be. It's pitching and defense. It's going to carry them. They're going to silence the great Jays offense in the 2022 World Series. That is going to do it for this episode of the 3-0 Show. Thank you if you joined us live. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. If you're listening to the podcast version, you can find Eno on Twitter at Sarris. Find Britt at Britt_Ghiroli. Find me at Derek VanRiper. Be sure to get a subscription to The Athletic for just $1 a month at theathletic.com/baseball show. The Athletic Baseball Show returns on Friday. Enjoy opening day.
At the 3-0 show, you've always got the green light.